Okay, so I would like to, just to set up some context, I would like to very quickly maybe say your name and where you're from, but I would like to ask all of you, is it managing for exit the main reason why you build the company? And if not, what is the main reason and where is the exit falling in the ranking of your priorities when you start conceiving the idea or thinking about starting a company? So why don't we start with Gerard and then we'll go.
Okay, my name is Gerard Olivé. I'm co-founder of Antai Venture Builder. It's a venture builder, and we are, well, what you do is identifying ideas and then trying to add in value, hiring the right people, and scaling that business as quick as we can. Some of the companies that we started in Antai, it's Wallapop, Corner Shop, Globo, Delivery, or Shoppery. We have presence in 10 different countries, around 700 people, more or less. And we founded the company 5 years ago.
But do you think, how is like managing for an exit in the ranking? When you build a company, you know, you want to change the world, you want to make a lot of money, you want to be the boss, like, you know, you want to sell the company to Google for a lot of money. Is the exit at the top, or?
I think that the top is adding value to the customer. I think it's having a product really useful.
So exit is not really at the top of your mind.
Not.
On a continuous basis. Okay.
Hi, I'm Diego Cabezudo, founder and CEO of Gigas. We're sort of the Spanish Amazon Web Services, so we do infrastructure as a service, focusing in Spain and Latin America. We have a presence in most of countries in Latin America and several data centers. And we did our listing, we did our IPO last year in the alternative market in Spain. In terms of your question, I think from our side, we started in the typical Christmas lunch that a few of us got together and we started talking about how we were struggling to find cloud services in Spain, and there was no local service providers offering and stuff. So I think it's more that we saw the opportunity and we saw also the opportunity in the market, but also an opportunity for us to have fun. We were all working in larger companies, and I've been working in corporates, big telcos and stuff. So we wanted to do something different, something our own, and have fun.
So the exit was not a top priority for you either?
No.
It came.
Obviously, it's something that that you have in mind, but and for us, to be honest, the IPO wasn't an exit as such. It's more like a financing exercise, a funding exercise. So our exit will probably, hopefully, come someday. But in the meantime, we're having fun and building something good.
Katie, you haven't started a company, but you work for a big company.
I work for a big company, and we are a serial acquirer of people. So my name is Katie Kozuki. I'm with Google's corporate development team. So we do all of the merger and acquisition activity, as well as strategic investing for Google. And so obviously we're on the other side of the equation as compared to a lot of my peers here. But so I think I would be remiss in saying we love it when people consider exiting as an option, but I think we would also say, focusing on building the product and building the business is really what we want to see from entrepreneurs, people who have a passion for doing that thing and have a strong vision for where they're going, because I think it's easy to get distracted if you're planning for an exit as opposed to building a business. And so we like those people who are really focused on, going for success, and I think good things come from that. But I think practically speaking, there's always some things entrepreneurs can do to help give themselves some optionality down the line. And so getting to know some of your potential strategic acquirers, and so if and when down the line you are looking at exit options, you have those options kind of in play.
Great. Adeyemi, you've been involved in a couple of good exits.
Definitely. So Adeyemi Ajao, I've been in 3 Spanish companies as co-founder, 20 Cabify and Job and Talent, and then one that I did in the US called Identified. And I think it's a very good question. I will say that with 20 Job and Talent Cabify, in the first year, and particularly in the first 6 months to a year, in which we're just talking about the idea and getting the friends together. It was like not thinking of an exit. It's like, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to take over the world. It's going to be so much fun. And then you take the first dollar. And I think that the moment you have investors, the mentality completely changed. And in my case, because I was not running the day-to-day of the company, I constantly played the role of the one being, oh, yeah, that's great, but how are we going to sell this? And when I say sell, I don't mean necessarily the exit, but thinking about the next round of funding. And I think, to Katie, and I think you're completely right, it's interesting because the way venture capital works, I think that you are constantly put on a treadmill, that you are thinking about how am I going to get money, how am I going to get money, how am I going to get money next. But the truly great companies are built by the people that are not thinking about that. So it's an interesting dichotomy.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Clemente Cebrián. I am co-founder of Ganso. Ganso is a fashion brand for men, women, and kids. We are now in 10 countries, in Spain and also in other countries in Europe and Latin America and Latam. And now you can see many sneakers this day here in the summit because we are wearing the stuff. And then you can see our sneakers over there. Yeah. Not here, but normally. Then for us, exit is not a priority. We want to build a long-term company. And for us now, we have a partner. We have since the last year, we have El Capital from Louis Vuitton. They have the 49% of the company, but now it's a family company with a partner, and really we are living with them. Is perfect for us because we are in a process of changing the company, and we are watching to the new markets, and we want to focus in Europe and France, and in the near future in the USA, and then we want to focus in the long term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So I think the main takeaway for us is that good entrepreneurs, they normally make a lot of money, but an exit is not the main driver when they build a company, which is incredible. When I was at Google, I was there for 8 years, and it was shocking to me how the founders, they were each of them worth, over $40 billion, and every Friday they were there like late, addressing questions about strategy and food and employees, and again they could travel the world and not worry about money for generations, but they were so committed to what they founded that they were still there even after a huge exit. So I don't think an exit really changes the commitment of an entrepreneur when they build something, and I hear that from all of you guys. I would like to go more specifically into what's happening in Europe. I have this theory that we live in a moment where really there is a very downside for an investor to lose money, because if you, at least in the US, if you invest in a good team, in a decent idea, even if they're not very successful, the chances of that team being acquired by a large corporation just for talent, it's very big. Like, both at Google and Ajao, when I was there, we acquired a lot of people just because of the engineers they had and what they were doing. So, and normally the price that we pay for those companies was at least the paid-in capital from the investors. So even when things got really bad, the investors, they normally get their money back just because of the talent. I don't see that happening in Europe. And I see a lot of companies closing and going down and everyone losing their money because it's hard for large corporations to actually recognize talent and acquire companies for talent. Why, maybe we should start with Katie because she's the only acquirer here, but why do you think Europe is lagging so much behind in acqui-hires, in recognizing talent in startup, in integrating startup, in keeping that talent within the companies? And what could we do in Europe to change that situation?
I think there's a lot of different reasons why companies would want to acquire. Sometimes it is the big businesses and buying into the market or buying a set of users. Sometimes it is the tech, right? And then sometimes, like you said, it's purely the talent. From my perspective, the talent in the businesses are all here across Europe. I've seen it. I think there's been an explosion over the years. And so I think I recently moved to London. We're in the process of expanding Google's corporate development team globally. And so I've been getting up to speed on the markets here. I think some of the differences that I notice are really more around the marketing and the networking aspects. And so what I mean by that is, on one hand, I think when you are looking a lot at cross-border M&A or you're looking at acquirers that might not be in your backyard, I think people have to work really hard to make those connections and build those bridges with potential acquirers. And so, leveraging your investor base, for example, to reach out to potential acquirers, I feel like in the Valley, people are probably a little bit more proactive in really marketing their portfolio companies, or when people are exploring exit options, I think they're usually pretty good about doing that. Where I would say here in Europe, I think I see more mixed results on that standpoint. And then I think the other thing sometimes comes just down to the entrepreneurs themselves. I think a lot of European entrepreneurs are so modest and humble, which in and of itself isn't a bad thing. But I think when it comes time to really pitching yourselves, right, I would encourage entrepreneurs to really own the successes you had and talk that up, and don't play it too humble, because sometimes that can work against you in a pitch. But so I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I think a lot of it is increasing the awareness to potential acquirers, because it is harder.
So entrepreneurs, they need to work harder on their marketing skills. So they should go and see you. Are you based in London?
I am based in London.
So they should go, at least, you want to pitch Google, just go and see Katie in London. Schedule one meeting a year, at least, to keep in touch. And then maybe Google will acquire you eventually. No, but that is true. I do believe entrepreneurs, they underestimate that. It's not a problem of corporations not understanding the value of these entrepreneurs. It's actually the responsibility of entrepreneurs on educating the corporate world on the value that they can bring into the table. Adeyemi, you were involved in selling your US company to Workaday. You worked in the deal. You were in the front of it. What were the difference in that process versus what you saw here in Europe on 20 and others? Do you agree that the marketing happens better in the US? And entrepreneurs, do you see how it's more systematic, how they call 50 people and they email 50 companies? What was your experience in selling your company to Workaday?
So I agree with Bernardo and Katie. So going back to actually 4 years ago when I started the company, one of the first pieces of feedback that I got when I was raising my first money in the US was, Adeyemi, you have to be a lot more arrogant. And I was like, what are you talking about? Arrogance is not good. It's like, no, you don't get it. We're American. If you think you're being really arrogant, you're here. And I got a co-founder that I think you met that we nicknamed American Psycho, because he actually looked like the guy. And it's the most aggressive human being on earth. We sent so many emails to create the we're selling the company that we had to use Salesforce to track it. So that is definitely a factor. I would say that the other big factor, in my opinion, and now having worked there for a couple of years and actually bought a couple of companies, I think the biggest driver of corporate acquisitions is fear. Because in the case of Workday, for example, when they saw what we had built for recruiting, we're like, oh, wow, that's, that could actually compete with our system, so we should get it. And I think that in Europe, companies have been very stable and with no threat. If you were, for example, a European bank, for the past 20 years, no one was touching your business, and now every European bank is paranoid about fintech and Google taking over, or someone like that. So that is the other big difference. That in our case, we saw a lot of corporations that were not necessarily tech, thinking, well, I should get on this because I have to get technology, and I think that's slowly coming here.
Yeah, Diego, do you have an experience in that? Have you talked to Amazon?
No, to Amazon in particular, we haven't. No, I think in terms of the acqui-hire, one of the drivers, I think, and it will probably happen in Europe more and more, is the talent scarcity, which, of course, in the Valley, it's a big problem. And talent is really expensive and stuff, so when you do the maths, it works out to buy companies. Here in Europe, until a few years ago, in most places, for example, here in Spain, talent is, there was a lot of talent. Now, for us, for example, it's very difficult to get really good technical people. So, and one of the reasons we went public was actually to be able to acquire companies and stuff. And one of the profiles of companies that we're looking at is actually people, companies with small companies, but with really good technical teams. So I think that's going to happen more and more because of just the scarcity.
It will be easier for Telefonica to buy one of your companies and hire 50 people. You know? So
Exactly.
it's
For
harder
them
for
to
you to hire,
replicate,
but to replicate
it's,
everything.
it's
so
much more
makes sense.
expensive.
And in fashion, Clemente, in fashion, do you believe in talent acquisition in fashion? Do you think it's a way of an exit for you to go to, and sell to Adolfo Dominguez or Desigual or?
No, yes, depends. Yes, we had two options. We had in the last year we had the option to go with a big company, industrial company, or with a venture capital or fund, no? And we think that for us it's very important the brand, El Ganso in this case, the brand is for us the most important, and then we need to work alone. We are with Louis Vuitton, but Louis Vuitton respect our brand, and this is very important for us. For us, we want to maintain the brand, and we think that perhaps El Ganso one day we can develop El Ganso in the USA, in Latam, in Asia, and then if we were bought by an industrial company, perhaps in the future we could disappear.
So
no?
an
Yes.
exit is not even in the horizon. now.
No, for us, no.
Right. So
Yes.
That's actually really good. I think good entrepreneurs, the common denominator with entrepreneurs is like an exit is something that happens only when they're forced.
Yes.
When it comes to them in a big way, but it's not a main driver. But so let's talk about liquidity, Gerard. You created probably one of the best and largest startups in the internet Spain, at least lately, and we used to be very proud. Wallapop. You guys created a very liquid secondary market there. What are your thoughts on secondary markets? When they should exist? What are the the advice that you give entrepreneurs when they when to create a secondary market, and your takeaways from the couple of opportunities of liquidity that existed in Wallapop?
I think that we had some conversations, you and me, talking
Yes, about that. Yeah,
about
yep.
that, because he was investor in Wallapop, so we had a lot of
And I left in
conversations.
a secondary market.
Yeah. So I think that secondary is really healthy. And
Yeah.
it's something that it's really important for the European and the Spanish ecosystem. I think that we need, as entrepreneur, as a co-founder, as in charge of the corporate things in a company, what I'm trying to do is always trying to possibilitate that secondary options.
Yep.
Having business angels that is invested in the company around 1 million valuation doesn't make sense. Having them as in the cap table when the company is around, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 million valuation. Of course, it's not easy because doing that secondary takes a lot of time. So you have to take a lot of time having conversations with your investors. All of them are asking to you, so what do you think it's the best I have, what I have to do? And it's something that it's not easy to answer that. But it only happens when the primary it's really full. So it's really important when you're raising money. If you first of all, it's the primary thing, of course. But negotiating the secondary, it's really important having the primary full. When the primary is full, what the conversation is about the discount, and it's always about the discount and the difference between primary stock and common stock. I'm seeing discounts between 5 to 25 to 30% in Spain. We did some partial exits in companies, not only Wallapop. We did also, I sold 2 companies as a acqui-hiring, so just giving value to the team. The first one was Fancy Box, and we merged and we sold the company to Be Pretty. And the second one was Cheap Place, and we sold the company to eShop. I completely agree about the way you have to do that. So it's nobody's gonna come and knock your door and saying that I'm here because I want you as a team, I want you as a startup or whatever. So you need to connect through LinkedIn or wherever, going there and putting in value yourself, your team, and doing that deal. No? And it's not easy. The difference between the deals that we did in the United States or here in Europe, or mainly in Spain or South America, is that in in the United States and London, the Anglo-Saxon culture, people are more pragmatic. So the negotiation is more about numbers. And in Spain and South America, maybe Southern Europe, this, it's more about values. And we had several times that conversation, no? About the teams. And I think that it's better that approach, like being more pragmatic. But I think that that acqui-hiring is really important, and secondary it's really important, and it's really healthy, and it's something that it's really important for the ecosystem. So the entrepreneurs we have to do that.
It makes sense. I thank you for creating a secondary that I exit over there. We probably have time for a couple more questions, but most companies fail. Most startups fail. I think Y Combinator gives a rate of 0.4% of the companies applying to Y Combinator make it to be worth more than $40 million. So it's a really, really, really low chance of winning. You know, a big warning to anyone thinking of starting a company. So, and one of the so when your company fails, which is most of them, what I see here in Spain and in Europe in general, they just close down. And in the US, they activate an incredible amount of resources into selling the team and the company for whatever it is. You know, paid in capital or sometimes for stock of the company of the acquirer. For any of you, what are the advices when things go bad? If you've been in, when things go bad, for any entrepreneur out there, struggling to make it, what is the advice, at least to save some value of what you've been working so hard for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? You know, what is the best way of selling your company when you don't do well? It's not an exit when things go well. Where is the advice when you have a decent team, a decent product, but it's not going well, no more money, you couldn't raise more capital, you can't make it? What do you do? What's your advice? Maybe Katie? What do you, sorry to put you on the spot. What's your advice for that moment of last resource exit that you have to do? Again, here in Europe, most companies close down with nothing. What I've seen in the US, a good friend of mine, he's a general partner at Kleiners, said I spend 40% of my time, sometimes 50% of my time just selling the companies don't make it. And here in Europe, the VCs just close down the companies. So that's a huge difference between the US and Europe in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, deciding what to do with your company is such a personal thing, and I think it's part of it is looking internally to say, hey, if the current track I'm going on isn't working, do I have the energy and the bandwidth and to some extent the financing to pivot, right? So there's always those types of options. I think if you decide you don't want to wind down, you're not in a position to pivot, but I think people shouldn't discount the expertise that you've built in however many months or years you've put into the business that you've been building, right? And so when you think about some of these talent hires that we've been talking about, a company like Google or other acquirers will really value that knowledge that you've learned in being in the trenches. There's a high likelihood you develop some IP or code or a product that still could be valuable to someone, right? And so I think a lot of that is just understanding what have you built, what is the unique value, trying to think about who might find that expertise or that tech valuable, right? And how that could possibly fit in or be additive. And I think then it is going out to your networks and leveraging your investors and anybody else within that network to really give that a shot, right? And put together a great teaser and pitch deck and take that time to go out there and see if you have other options, because you very well might.
Super fast, because normally you're running out of money and you have to do it in a week or two. Any other ideas, any best practices?
I'll say one, which is leverage your investors, because as your friend was saying on Kleiner, in the US, you know that as an investor, that is part of your duty. And it's very different if an entrepreneur goes to Katie and goes hey, this is not working, I want to sell my company to Google, than if I'm an investor and I go Katie, you're not going to believe this technical team that I have. I don't know that they necessarily want to build a business, and Google might be a great home to fully develop their vision. It's a huge difference.
Yeah,
yep.
I agree. And I think, we a lot of serial acquirers will have regular conversations with VCs, right? That is part of what we do, and so they should also be very aware about things that might interest us and be able to help do that matching, in addition to the good pitching.
I recently, a friend of mine just sold his company. He was working really hard in New York, building this, app as a voicemail. Like, I knew it wasn't going to work, but he tried really hard and he did it. And then he said, "It's time to close it down. We can't raise any more money." And then just in 2 weeks, he got a list of every possible corporate development, any KD in the U.S. and email all of them, send them a deck like just one pager. For this money, you can get 13 developers, 3 iOS, 2 Android, 1 PM, 3 designers, and he sold his company to Spotify within 2 weeks for the penny capital. So the investors got the money back, and they got a job with good earnout at Spotify. And I see that happening all the time in the US and very rarely in Europe.
And I guess the one thing I would just add to a comment we had earlier was just, again, I think people should be very focused on building the business, but what I said earlier about trying to maintain some relationships throughout while you're building that business will help for if and when these occurrences happen, right? You will have developed business relationships or commercial relationships with some of the acquirers, and you will know whether those are people you even want to spend time trying to work with, right? You can weed things out along the way.
Which is really good. Okay.
I think, Bernardo, it's really important that I think it's a huge difference between the companies that I read that from the United States and from Europe. Mm-hmm. So it's more technology companies in the United States. Here in Europe, it's more consumer, more copycat, more e-commerce, more marketplace. So it's a huge difference between that.
So it's hard to sell those companies.
I think that for me, what it's really important, and it's easy to say and it's hard to do, is be pragmatic and taking the phone and call your competitors and trying to sell your company and trying to sell yourself, but not put yourself in a distressed way. So it's trying to sell your team, your company, your brand, your customers, and everything the same way that when you're trying to raise money. And it's really important. And I think it's really important also have the mentality of finishing the things. And I'm seeing a lot of companies that when the things are not going well, the team is not finishing the things. So we start thinking about another startup or trying to find a job or something. And I think it's really important, finishing the things.
To bring closure, good closure to the existing project. Okay, liquidity for everyone, all right? So, you're entrepreneurs, you're probably thinking you have a large share in your company. When you think about liquidity, what are your thoughts in sharing liquidity with your entire company? At Google and Facebook and Apple, everyone has stock. Everyone, shares the liquidity of the equity creation in the company. That's not very common in Spain, in Europe in general. Equity, tends to be granted only to the top management and to the founders. What are your thoughts in sharing liquidity into making everyone part of the success of the company?
Yes, in our case, for example, our company is a familiar company. It's difficult to change the mentality of the board of directors. I think that now with our new partner, we are changing our mentality. But here in Spain, I think that the familiar companies or a lot of companies, we think that the liquidity is only, or the equity is only for the board of director or the family. And I think that we have to change this mentality because it's important, and there are many workers that are very important in the development of the company. And I think that we are changing, but step by step. I think that Spain now is different. It's not the same than in the USA or London.
People at your company, that's the practice. You have equity at the top, and then not for everyone.
Yes, no. In the past, we only the board of directors, and now with this French company, the partner are from France and a part of the USA. They want to change this, and they want to have more equity and to involve to the rest of the company. That is very important for us.
So you believe, okay.
Yes.
Do you have your company?
Well, in our case, actually, we took advantage of the IPO to give shares to absolutely everyone in the company.
That's great.
And that's something that I wanted to do. But some of our investors, when I told them, they were like, "What? To everyone? Why are you going to do that?" And we did it. And I remember sending an email and instead of employees, dear partners, and everyone was really, really excited. And for the company, it was only a few shares, but we did that. And also now that it's going to be 1 year from the IPO, we're going to give double the shares that we gave.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's been amazing. People are really, really involved, and they feel, as I said, they moved from employees to partner. But I remember some of the investors, and not the VCs, but more like traditional investors, and they were saying, but then the shareholder meeting is going to be like an employee meeting. I say, yeah, and that's great. It's great. They'll be part of the company. So for us, I think it has been a great thing.
There is a long way to go, but I think it's very important to bring everyone, in the same boat and share the liquidity. So when you sell the company, then everyone is celebrating. But traditionally in Spain, when the company gets sold, only the founders and the board of directors celebrate because everyone else is the same thing. Nothing changes for them. But you see examples how the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples have changed the lives of thousands and thousands of people because the wealth is shared when liquidity comes. All right. One last question. What happens after the liquidity? What happens after the exit? When you have a lot of money, then you get you retire early because you made it. You take the money and you do something else. You put it in the bag and you keep doing the same thing. So what happens after the exit? In your experience, does it change your life? Some people they get blocked, as we know, and they can. So what happens after the exit? And what's your experience?
I'm a serial entrepreneur, so what I did, it's funding 2 new companies, Global and Delivery.
We know.
And I'm having a lot of fun. I'm doing that. So I think that, of course, it changed your life in some way. The next company that you're trying to make, the approach is a little bit different, maybe. But I'm doing the same, have the same friends, I'm living in the same place, I'm doing more or less the same things. So it's not relevant. I think that it's more relevant the fun that you're having building the companies than the exit.
It's so funny how for everyone out there just winning the lottery, it's what they're looking for to change their lives. And here we have people that they won the lottery and it doesn't change their lives, and they take that money and they keep doing the same thing. So I think it's again a common denominator in entrepreneurs how money is a driver, but it's not the main driver. Diego?
Well, in my case, I'm hoping to be able to answer that question in a while, because I haven't had liquidity. I mean, I have everything invested in the company. I have a lock-up, and planning to grow it much more. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to change much. I'll probably do another one, and I'm not going to retire. I don't want to retire, even if I got a lot of money. So exactly, I'll keep working. I just think it gives you a bit of freedom to do more really what you like, and to have a cushion to be able to do what you really want. But I wouldn't say it won't change my life.
Kate, in your experience, you say people retiring after the exit and sticking around and helping Google?
Yeah, I wish I'm. No, I think we very much self-select for entrepreneurs who want to stay there and continue to scale what they started with Google. And so I think we align deal incentives as much as we want the people on their own to stay there and build. So I think you see a natural rhythm of there'll be people who will continue to go and build this product and scale it up to a massive scale thing. And I think you will also see some people who over time will go back to their entrepreneurial roots and start something else because perhaps they have the capital to do so, or they just have the bug. So I think we see all permutations, but we try to keep people around as much as we can, because that's obviously why we acquire them. We want them to help build this out going forward. So.
And you have a good stock to incentivize people to stay in. So you normally add a good retention package there.
We try.
Adeyemi?
I agree with Gerard and everyone here. I think a common characteristic is that we're constantly dissatisfied. In my case, sometimes I'm like, wow, this is too much work, like whatever. I have one conversation with one entrepreneur that is doing something cool, and I come back home and tell my girlfriend I'm such a failure. I should be like working so much harder. Like tomorrow I'm just going to kill it. And I don't think it's ever going to stop for the people I've met.
Yeah. We just had that conversation today with Zaren, you know, like, so.
Yes, and in my opinion, Bernardo, I think that we have to give society back what society has given us. And I think that this is very important, and we have this inside us because we are lucky, man. And we have to give back the same that we have received. And this is important.
I think that another important is when you're selling the company, what you get is freedom, and how to use it. It's the main issue.
Yeah. How to use that freedom, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably right. And we like, you know, we dream with a state where we're free, and then when you achieve freedom, what do you do with it, you know? That's why we don't retire normally, you know? And we keep doing what we want instead of what we have to do, you know? So anyway, I hope you guys, we don't have time for more questions, but hope you got good takeaways from the panel here today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And keep enjoying the day. Thank you.